TennoCon 2026 was an amazing experience. I mean, look at me. While Warframe definitely has a very bright future ahead of it, I was also amazed by how far Soulframe has come, the EA's upcoming fantasy ARPG. I personally last played it in November 2025 when the Founder Access released, so when the devs approached me and asked me if I wanted to give it another look, I was very much on board. So, after a big shout out to all our generous channel members, and to Digital Extremes for sponsoring this video, let's take a look at Soulframe in 2026. What is it? Where does it stand? And, most importantly, is it something for you? But alright, let's slow it down for a second. While I'm sure that the DE purists among us know exactly what I'm talking about, many of you will also have never heard about Soulframe to begin with. So, first things first, what even is Soulframe? Soulframe is the brand new and upcoming fantasy action RPG by the Warframe developers Digital Extremes. As of making this video, it is currently in its Preludes phase, which is the pre-alpha. Or at least that's how the developers call it, because if you ask me personally, then calling Soulframe pre-alpha is underselling it a little bit, because there's quite a lot of content to find here. Of course, the game isn't finished yet, and the devs constantly add new features while revamping and refining others. However, especially if you're a little loot goblin like me, and you really like to hunt for all the upgrades to min-max your builds, then you can already easily put dozens upon dozens of hours into the game. But now, what is Soulframe all about? Well, in Soulframe, you take on the role of an envoy, a magical warrior of nature fighting against evil invaders corrupting the world. Or, in other words, a dude with a sword who kills hundreds of people, desecrates shrines, extorts the locals for everything they're worth, shoves innocent animals into leaking oil pipes to clog up the system just to blow up the entire oil rig with a mortar strike. Long story short, we're having fun. And all of this, either alone or with your friends in co-op. But okay, jokes aside, in this video, I'm gonna go over what to expect from Soulframe and how all these features look like in practice so you can get a better feel for the game for yourself. And the first topic I would like to get into would be the game world and what you can do in it. See, Soulframe takes place in the mythical world of Alka, where currently we have access to the island of Midrath that offers tons of activities. You can engage in combat by ambushing enemy patrols, as well as raid bases and outposts for more loot. At the same time, you can also seek out animal cages to free them, as well as charm wild animals in the forest, all to gain upgrades that you can later use on your equipment. Don't worry, we're going to talk about upgrades and progression later. However, while exploration and mindless killing is of course always fun, there are of course also active missions you can do. For example, also in Soulframe, similar to the syndicates in Warframe, we have different factions that we can join. You can seek out the leaders of those enclaves throughout the world and pledge your allegiance to them. After that, you will have the chance to pick up enclave missions, which as a reward will give you standing with the respective enclaves so you can rise through the ranks. Similarly to Warframe, these enclaves will offer you unique items and rewards the higher your rank gets, and if you want to have all the shinies, you will have to spend quite some time toiling away at these missions to max out everything. However though, if you personally prefer to be a bit more cinematic and you like a challenge, then how about operations and sieges? Operations are smaller type open world events where you, for example, intercept a shipping up to the Odin airship or blow up the aforementioned oil rig type of construction while taking out dozens upon dozens of enemies in the process. My personal highlight though would be the fortress sieges. See, throughout Midrath there are various different castles and fortresses. Some of them don't have anything special to them just yet. However, if you spot a red balloon hovering over the fortress, that is when the fun starts. These red marked castles are besiegeable, and in these sieges, your objective is to attack and enter the castle while fighting off hordes and hordes of enemies, slay multiple different bosses to finally make your way up to the top of the castle and set ablaze the red balloon as the symbol of oppression. The great thing about those sieges is that no castle feels like the other. For example, the relatively low-level Fort Curlail right here can only be entered by blowing up the front gate with an artillery that can neatly be found on the other side of the entrance bridge. Turret Jorta right here in comparison then tried to overwhelm me with hordes of enemies in the relatively narrow entrance area, and then gave me an additional objective to take out 2 special enemies with torches before they can burn down sensitive intel. In Fort Kernold, I already thought I was basically done, just grab the torch, light it on fire over there to set the balloon ablaze, but then guess what? The commander of the fort came out and said, nope, only over my dead body. So yeah, that's exactly what I did. My personal highlight though was Castle Mirifwir. I'm pretty sure I butchered that, but this one was by far the most complex. First of all, there's no way to enter the front gate, so you kinda sorta have to search a way around and enter through the sewers. Inside then, you gotta fight your way through the 3 layers of the castle. Each and every one comes with its individual boss enemy. And even when you finally make it to the top, all 3 previous bosses will return and tag team you, which is definitely quite a bit challenging. So yeah, the open world already has quite a lot of activities tied to it. However, in addition to the open world map, there are also randomized dungeon tilesets similarly to the level design in Warframe. These dungeons can be entered at various locations scattered throughout the map, and so far we have 4 different dungeon tilesets. First of all, there's the Undercity of Yermak, an ancient overgrown underground ruin with a lot of secret treasure chests to find and the humanoid Ode-type enemies as a faction. The Glades then are a more open corrupted swamp where you're gonna find some Ode soldiers as well, but mainly these weird zombie mimic type enemies who really like to jump at you and surprise you from the side. If you're easily jump scared, well then good frickin' luck. One of the more newer tilesets though would be the Neathans, which is a warm and magical looking tunnel system that takes you through the deep roots of the ancient world trees. Right here, you can find mostly spiders and these ant-like looking tree creatures which pack quite a punch. And finally then, I'm not 100% sure if I can call it its individual tileset, but there's also the Crypt of the Saccade, which is a more narrow type of standard roleplay-like dungeon. A quick interruption, post-MHBlacky here. As it turns out, I forgot to mention one tileset, which would be the Hrothgar ruins, and they're kinda sorta the interiors of fallen Odin's sky towers. I'm not gonna show all too much here because the wiki says that in its current form it's only in an early preview and there's more to come later for this tileset. But yeah, quickly wanted to mention that it's not 4, it's technically 5 dungeon tilesets. In all those dungeons then, and also throughout the open world, there are various elite enemies and world bosses to fight and of course farm to get all the beautiful loot and exclusive weapons. And speaking of weapons, let's finally get into the topic that you probably all been waiting for, and that is the loot and the upgrade systems. Yes, I know leveling an entire castle all by yourself is very intriguing, but I know you're not playing the game for fun or something, we're playing for the loot. So let's talk about it. See, one of the biggest contrasts to Warframe is that in Soulframe you're not playing as different characters. You create one character and that then is your envoy. To change your quote-unquote character class, which skills you have available and in general your playstyle, that will be where you can swap out different arm pieces which are called pacts and basically represent what is a Warframe in, well, Warframe. It changes the skills, the playstyles, basically the entire class. So far, we already have quite a bunch of pacts to choose from for the standard roles like frontline tank, a more stealthy assassin, and a whole bunch of other stuff that I unfortunately did not have enough time yet to dive into. The way you upgrade those pacts works similarly to Warframe in that they go up to level 30. With each level, you unlock a skill point, which you can then use on this skill tree right here that gives your pacts additional features. Like for example on my Tetherin here, I can get more stagger resistance, get a little bit of heal whenever I take out an enemy, and so on and so forth. In combination with your pact though, you're of course gonna want to use the right weapon. And when it comes to weapons, there is already quite some variety. As of making this video, there are around about 50 different weapons available throughout multiple weapon classes. We have of course the standard melee type weapons like longswords, greatswords, daggers, and so on. However, also for the non-melee players, there are quite a bunch of toys to play around. On the one hand, we have magical weapons. These are very nice for people who like to skill issue a lot, like myself, because the magic projectiles that you shoot will hit the enemies automatically, not that much aim involved. On the other side of the spectrum though, we would have the bows. These have the highest single target damage potential if you manage to nail those well-aimed headshots. Each and every one of these weapons then can exist in multiple different quality levels indicated by the number of stars below their image. The higher the quality of a weapon, the more damage it of course deals. However, every weapon also comes with randomized perks, like more attack speed, more damage, stuff like that. The kicker here is that the higher the quality of your weapon is, the more of these randomized perks you're gonna get. That is why, to upgrade your damage, you want to take your low-quality weapons to the blacksmith and increase their quality to get more and more of those perks and hopefully get a very strong combination. On top of that, there's also already a somewhat rudimentary modding system, if I can call it that, which in Soulframe goes by the name enchanting. Here, you can put different runes and totems on your weapon, which are vaguely similar to mods in Warframe by giving you specific situational buffs and stat boosts when using the weapon. To keep yourself safe from damage, there are also a bunch of different armor sets available, all with individual stats. Now, to be fair, all of this really just scratched the surface, and there's a lot more to the upgrade system, but naturally in a video like this we don't have the time to dive that deep. All I'm trying to say here though is that when I last played the game, there was hardly any of this available. However, now, the game to me for the first time feels like it's actually possible to make some dedicated builds. It's by far not as complex as Warframe, but I think it's already a strong foundation. And yes, of course, there is also Fashion Frame. Just like in Warframe, you can color the different color channels of your individual armor pieces as well as your pact, and if you just don't like the look of whatever armor piece has the best stats, you can take the skin of other armor pieces and apply it to your personal look. That, I think, is very, very nice. But okay, so far we talked about the gameplay, we talked about the world, as well as some of the progression mechanics. However, I know that a lot of you also love Warframe and DE for the stories that they tell. So, how does that look in Soulframe? Well, to be fair, I cannot say all too much about the lore of the game because I simply haven't played it for long enough to really know all too much. One thing that I do want to mention though is that there are already quite some cinematic story quests. These quests, or also called fables, usually tell you more about the stories of your different ancestors. You're presented with a problem, you fight enemies, have an epic boss fight at the end, and then cleanse the ancestor from corruption so that they can join your cause and help you along the way. Some of the recent highlights for me personally was the quest surrounding the bear Bromias, whom we have to help to plant a seed and grow an ancient tree in corrupted soil. Or, if you like pirates, then you definitely gotta check out the new Duelo quest, in which you're gonna be on deck of a ship in the midst of a storm, dueling the ghost crew and the captain in a one-on-one. No skills allowed, just dodging, parrying, and overall being the better melee fighter. This was definitely my cup of tea. But, of course, all of this is not the end of our story, but barely even the beginning. At TennoCon, for example, roughly 2 weeks ago, the devs gave us some sneak peeks on what to expect in the next couple of updates, and there is still so much to come. On the story side of things, we're finally gonna get some background information on our mother and how our entire journey as an envoy started. I'm not gonna spoil all too much here, just saying that the cinematics in the background looked incredibly epic. But also on the gameplay side, they announced a bunch of new features. For example, the long-awaited addition to finally be able to use your creatures as mounts and traverse the world a bit faster. Also, what would a DE game be without fishing? Yep, that's right, Soulframe is gonna have a fishing minigame. However, in comparison to Warframe, we're not just gonna throw some spears into the water and that's it. The devs said that there's gonna be more to it with different types of baits and different types of strategies on how to best catch certain fish. By the way, if you haven't already, then you can check out the full Soulframe presentation from TennoCon over at the official Soulframe channel. However, now that we're already talking about the development and the future of Soulframe, there was still one big question that I had. Having played Warframe for a long time, I also know that Digital Extremes has a very deep culture of listening to feedback and developing their games alongside the community. Unfortunately though, with me playing Soulframe only on and off at the moment, I can see the progress, yes, but I don't know anything about the process on how we got there. So, to get a better insight on the development of Soulframe, I asked one of the Soulframe OGs, one of the people who have been with the community for the longest time, and the #1 Soulframe guide maker, Sarah Loves Archery. Sarah, what do you think? How is DE handling the project so far?
Thanks, Blacky. I'd be happy to chat about how Soulframe has changed over time. Soulframe's developers have already established a pattern of listening to feedback and responding with changes, sometimes by giving us exactly what we want, but more often through addressing the player's fundamental needs in new and creative ways. For example, when bestitching first arrived in Soulframe, Moonsteel Thread would apply a skin to a specific item, meaning you'd have to keep using more thread to transform your armor anytime you got better gear. The community was pretty unanimous about wanting permanent skin unlocks, and that is exactly what we have now. Spend 1 Moonsteel Thread to unlock an armor piece's skin to use as many times as you want on anything you want. Our virtue changes, on the other hand, have been a much more exciting journey. When I started playing Soulframe, you'd use little plus and minus buttons to allocate your virtue points, but some players didn't realize they needed to do this and were playing the game with their points unspent. DE tried to solve this with prisms, which would automatically allocate virtue points proportionally, but many players didn't like how that limited your ability to fine-tune your build. So, DE introduced Virtue Liths, a consumable item that let you fully customize your virtues, kinda like what we have now, except you'd have to spend a Virtue Lith to rebalance. This system was pretty good, but most people, myself included, were not a fan of having skill allocation locked behind a consumable with a pretty low drop rate. So, DE got rid of the consumable entirely, and now we can tweak our virtues as much as we like. The arsenal still does have that little wobble that messes with the pebble placement a bit, but hey, it's a pre-alpha. I'm sure they'll get to it eventually because they've certainly shown us that they're listening and working to make each prelude better than the last.
Oh yeah, the UI in the arsenal, I would love to see a little adjustment there as well. But thank you so much for the insight, Sarah. And by the way, if you don't know Sarah Loves Archery just yet, I'm gonna put a link to her channel in the cards. If you ever have trouble understanding Soulframe or you need guides on certain features, she's the #1 address to go to. If all of this sounds fun to you, then you can check out Soulframe for yourself with the links in the description as well as the pinned comment. If you want to, you can buy a Founders Pack for instant access. However, you can also sign up to the Preludes for free to hopefully get a key soon. And I'm not just saying that. Right now, the team sends out 2,000 access keys every single week. Once the game fully releases, it of course will be free to play for everyone, just like Warframe. Another big thank you to DE for sponsoring this video, and thank you to Sarah for hopping on and providing insight. Shoutouts as well go to Demon Lorzel, Demon Emperor, Emperor Prime, Not Linux Gaming, Ondakani2, Pepperwolf, Mihawk, Socrates the Almighty Rat, Leo Morazaki, Hantagas, Peterseder, Bumia1, Save, Almedai, Zengen, Quax, Blue Eagle 98, Hearthwield, Everin 8802, Gabriel Tevez, Yaku Ivan Gonzalez, G. Schnoz, Muffdisk, and all other generous channel members for your continuous support. We see each other, hopefully in the next one, and until then, as always, good loot.